So when we start dealing with the common root problems of homosexuality, you have to realize that many of the issues that we're going to talk about start from early childhood. So that means for anyone who realizes that, hey, something is wrong, no, they feel like, yeah, but I always felt different. This issue was always there. I just now realize what it is. And so it feels like easily I was born this way because it was always like that. Not realizing that a lot of the issues go back to early childhood. That's when things went wrong. It's like a train that very gradually in its moving started derailing, started going on wrong tracks, and in the end derails. So, I'm just thinking of Indiana Jones movies. You have these, they go through this tunnel and then the switch breaks and it goes into the wrong track. It's like you're already for a long time on the wrong track before you crash. So in order to get to the right track, you have to track back and get things fixed where it went wrong. And that's not just easy, but that's why I said the Lord can really change things in the past. He can. Okay. And then I already said it's a pile of mice, not an elephant. So let's look how this problem develops. Now let me tell you, in these modern years, these last 10 to 20 years, this issue when I wrote this paper was not there. I had to add this one. And of course this one was already really going on even 25 years ago, but it was so much more subtle. It was more sexualization, in the heterosexual sense. But right now it's really a bombarding. I mean, just imagine my children are in a Christian school. And I'm going to share more about this. Okay, I'm just mentioning it briefly here, but I'm going to get more into it much more deeper. My children are in a Christian school. Just the week before I left Philippines, my son gets in his literature class a piece of literature that they have to write an essay about. That what is called literature is nothing else than written pornography. Gay pornography. What? The way when you describe all kind of, people looking at one another and like making advances to one another and how it feels when they touch, those kinds of things. It's like, this is pornography, this is not literature. But it's called literature today. And then he has a teacher whom all the students in the school are suspecting he's gay. Because when you go to his Instagram, he is posing himself in his underwear. All the students know. And then in the next exam that my son got just this last week, his exam week, the teacher has made an exam. And of course, in his essay, my son wrote very clearly Christian principles. So he was very, very un-Filipino. Very good. He was Dutch. Well, I must even say he was standing for the kingdom of the Lord. And so now the teacher has made an exam where 50% is you have to translate this from Filipino to English. Oh, and then you have to write comments about it, some things about it. But if you cannot translate, you cannot do the next question earlier after that either. And so he basically failed that exam. And then when the teacher was giving the exam, of course, for the Filipinos, it's easy. They can translate. It's easy. It was an easy job. He laughingly said, "Yeah, this exam is going to be very easy, except for Emmanuel." Emmanuel was furious. So he tried to call me, but it was in the night because of time difference. So he started writing me. I said, "Papa, see what is happening. See what he's doing." I wrote to his class supervisor. I said, "This has been going on. This is happening." So this is unacceptable for me. I was very Dutch. And I said, "I want you to have a meeting with Emmanuel and listen very well to him. And if this is not resolved to my satisfaction, once I'm back in the Philippines, I want to have a meeting." I got a message back the next day. "Emmanuel, can we take the exam?" "No, please, this should not be recorded." The teacher now sent him, because he has to translate something, because he cannot really change the retake of the exam. The teacher sent him the Filipino text. He said, "You're not allowed to take the translation with you, but you can translate it at home and know what is written there." You have to stand up. Because this sexualization is, and really it's just bombarding them. And when parents do not stand up for the children, if parents don't bring that protective hedge and shield around their children, don't expect society does it. So parents really have to raise up in this regard. Don't allow yourself to be bullied, and don't allow your children to be bullied. They're really pressurized and pushed into something. I mean, in the former school, and it was one of the main reasons, my son already, anyways, that school only went to grade 10, and my son is now he's doing grade 12, but already a year in that school. That was not a Christian school, it was like a Catholic school before this Christian school, because it's just also Philippine curriculum. No, this is not that the Christian school came with those pornography written things. This is Filipino culture. A government curriculum. Yeah. This is all the children in the Philippines get this. But in the former school, they had a teacher who went a step further than what the curriculum demands. And they had to actually give a speech in front of the class to defend LGBTQ rights. Wow. So it's not like, what do you think about LGBTQ rights? No, you have to defend LGBTQ rights. So one of the other guys in the class who was not ready to do that conveniently went to the toilet and didn't come back before the end of the class. Emmanuel excused himself from the class and went on his phone. "Papa, look here what I need to do now." So I gave him some instructions how to do. how to actually tell what are the real LGBTQ rights. You have the right of healing, you have the right of health. You have the right to be the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. It's the problem when I do that, I will get bullied by some other kids in the class. I said, well, this is ridiculous. But the teacher somehow already felt that something is going on, that is not, this class is not taking it. So he didn't ask Emmanuel to do it. And then by the end of the class, they were told, oh, and for tomorrow, for you to know how it feels to be for a transsexual, all the boys have to come dressed in girls' clothes tomorrow, and all the girls have to come dressed in boys' clothes.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is what is happening in schools. This is the sexual conditioning today in our kids in schools.
Yeah.
So that was it for me.
It's crazy.
So I went that afternoon to the school. I said, I need to speak with the principal. He wasn't in anymore. He had already left. The teacher, nowhere to be found, somewhere in the corner. Because I already read the message. I said to the security guard, you know, the security guard at the gate, who knows everyone very well. I said, please, this and this is going on. I said, tell the principal, I will to meet with him tomorrow. I said, this issue for me is so serious, I will instantly take my children off the school if this is going to happen. And I said, let me tell that teacher, my son will not come and dress as a girl tomorrow, and let him not dare to say anything against my son. Obviously, the security guard gave the message already to the teacher, because that evening, the class in their class communication group got a message, oh, the dressing up thing is postponed to next week. So the next day, I had my meeting with the principal, and he started apologizing in every language he knew. I said, oh, no, he said, I wasn't aware that this was going on, that this teacher is doing this. This is not in our curriculum. This is a very sensitive topic. This should not be taught this way. And he said, I will speak right after this meeting with him. I'm going immediately to him. And so, as you can understand, the postponing to last week was postponed to never again. But, you know, if parents don't rise up, our children are pushed into something. And it's not just this, it's the whole social media.
Yeah.
Now, you see, the pushing they do. I mean, in the Netherlands, they have every spring, they have what they call in Dutch lentekriebels, like, how do I say, spring itchiness or something like that?
Spring fever.
Spring fever, yeah, spring fever. Like, and that's all about sexual education. Or in other words, LGBTQ promotion. Now, please realize, in a research in the US, they checked among adult men, and they asked how many of you, or they asked actually, have you ever had, to any kind of extent, same-sex attraction? Which means you have had one time a friend that you had some feelings towards, maybe just one person, or maybe 1 or 2 months you had some questions about your, you felt attracted somehow to the same sex, you were wondering, like, to the minimum level, how many have experienced that in your teenage years? What do you think was the percentage that said yes? And this was research before all this pushing was going on this heaven. How much percentage you think?
90 plus 60,
70% of the men.
Wow.
So 70% in their puberty, because your development is like a journey. And when you go over a road, you're in Switzerland, beautiful roads, no problem. Maybe sometimes the traffic jam holds you up a little bit. But go to Africa, you have potholes on the road, trees falling on the road. You have obstacles. Sometimes it's hard to pass the road. That's how our development goes as well. So the more obstacles, obstacles is actually active abuse. Potholes is passive abuse. You have learned about those? Yeah, so the more you encounter those, you can come to a point that you get stuck. You cannot pass. That's where homosexuality happens. You're stuck. But even if you don't get stuck, sometimes you can be delayed because of the obstacles. That's when those feelings come up. Something is not right. You are behind on your, your normal flow of development. It's somewhere interrupted. 70%. I think if you ask now, it will be higher.
What age group and where was this study done?
Yeah.
I heard it in the US, but where?
Yes, I have to check if I have the details of that, because in the past I didn't keep track. Nowadays I keep nicely track of all the research exactly. So there are research about it. There are many researches actually about this. I mentioned one now, but even if you look, there are more. And I saw yesterday that there are even more researches nowadays coming out, similar amounts. So the age group, it was like in your puberty time, adolescence time.
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere within that time, let's say from 12 to 18,
mm-hmm.
did this occur somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look in the end, how many end up in the gay lifestyle? It's about 2.5 to 3%. Actually, it's about the 3% is even included the bisexuals, like bisexual more to the gay side, like up to that part. It's just 3%.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if somebody ever told you 10%. When my wife did her cultural and language education in the Netherlands to get her Dutch passport, you have to learn the Dutch language and learn Dutch culture and how to interact with government, everything. They taught them in that training, 10% of the people is homosexual. It's a lie. It's not 10%. Of course, the LGBTQ community want to push it there, and they probably will get it there over time, but it's only 3%. Mm-hmm. So, but in that education in the Netherlands, in spring, every spring again, they actually tell, yeah. Okay, yes. Oh, it's not on. Yeah, now it's on. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so they actually, in that education, tell children how to masturbate, how to pleasure themselves. And they, under the disguise of telling children how to set boundaries, you can tell it in a way that you actually teach children you can invite others to do things to you, only to where you want it. Things that children, when you have a proper child safety education, which I did in India in schools, is that you tell a child, if anyone touches you in a place that is covered by your clothes, come and tell your parents, come and tell your teacher, come and tell somebody you trust. That is where you should teach children to protect themselves. You give sexual protection education, protection against sexual abuse, you give it in a non-sexual way to little kids, not in a sexualized way. They give it purposely in a sexualized way. So these things are happening. Okay. So this pushing is a very, very big problem. So I'll come back more in detail to that afterwards. Now, as I said, it is a development derailing. So there are always unhealed wounds from childhood, from your early years. Okay, so you have to go back to what happened in my childhood. Where was my childhood different from what is healthy? The issue is you do not know what is healthy if you didn't have a healthy childhood. Okay, and it is sometimes hard when you are frustrated and you're angry about things that happened in your past. It's sometimes very difficult to look at it in a calm way and in an analyzing way, like what really happened. Okay, so that's why actually, which will come later, forgiveness is a very important part in healing, because forgiveness helps you to take a blocking filter away, to really look at what happened and to deal with it appropriately. But those wounds often include a hunger for the father, that emotionally absent father. It doesn't, you see, if a father is completely absent, sometimes a child is better off than when the father is physically present but emotionally absent. Because if a father is completely absent, the child has most times the liberty to look for an alternative father figure. And if a child finds an alternative father figure that is healthy, that child doesn't need to have much problem. But if the father is there, he's basically blocking that child to look for an alternative father figure, but the father doesn't take his role. So there's always what we call father hunger. For some people in the gay lifestyle, this is so strong. Or I know one guy who, his father wasn't there, but his grandfather was there for him, which happens a lot in the Philippines. Children are being raised by the grandparents. So the grandfather is there. So the grandfather, they're really connected. But grandfathers are most times of higher age and pass away. And then there is a big wound and gap in early life. Because normally the father in most cases is still there. And then, but the father doesn't take his role. And then there is this deep craving for that grandfather to be back. And you'll see sometimes that these guys fall in love because they sexualize the father hunger and fall in love with much older men. And this is happening in the Philippines a lot, particularly. I mean, even I have Dutch friends in the Philippines, and their wives are much older than they are. I mean, with much older. Some of them, some of the other men that I've seen, it's not that the young girls, barely 20, some are not even 18, they walk with a man who walks with a stick. It's not that they could be their father, they could be their grandfather. They say, oh, but I love him. Oh, you love his wallet. No. And those men are in seventh heaven. Seventh heaven is not real, because it's only the third heaven. But they walk in the clouds. Like, oh, in my own country, no girl or no woman even looks at me anymore. I look at these most beautiful girls there. Say loves me so much. Like, my God, yeah. So father hunger is a big issue. Then often, what will come out also after, there is often the mother enmeshment. Because when a father is emotionally not present, the mother often tries to take that part of the father's role. So she becomes overbearing, suffocating the son. This often goes, a young guy growing up this way, or a young girl, feels confused. And so often doesn't know how to interact well in school. And you get peer rejection. You become the bully. The bullied one, because the bully is just as insecure. But he will pick on the one that is most insecure to bully. And so you don't only get a poor self-esteem, you get a poor gender esteem. A confusion about who am I in my gender. That starts happening very early. Okay, it's when you have children below 5, 6 years of age, they don't see gender. Boys play with girls, girls with boys, as if there's no gender difference. But from age 6, boys say, ew, no, it's girls, you don't play with the girls. And the girls say, oh no, those are boys, we don't want them. So it's boys play with boys, girls with girls. Why? Because a boy needs to get to understand his masculinity, reflecting it with many other boys, as many as possible, to get to understand himself. And the same for girls. And over time, the opposite sex becomes like mysterious, because you don't hang out with them. And that's what attracts once you go into puberty. But if you don't know yourself and you're confused, or if a boy only plays with girls, he starts identifying himself with other girls and starts magnifying any feminine trait that he finds in himself. I start believing I'm a girl. That's how the normal development derailment goes. Okay. And of course, when these those children that are insecure are also the targets of sexual predators. A sexual predator doesn't take a solid, self-confident boy or girl to abuse, because if they would do that, they know that they will be reported. They take the one that they know will not talk, will not say anything. It's easy to suppress. So those who are already struggling are now also often exactly the ones that get sexually abused, which adds to their confusion. Okay. Now, often another issue: when do boys, in particular in this case, not connect well with their father? You see, the father is typical masculine guy, typical like culturally athletic, strong, and the son is the same. They easily connect. But if the father is like athletic, and like I know a good friend in the Netherlands, he's teaching also on this a lot. His father was a professional football player, and his father always said, my son, he cannot even kick a dent in a package of butter. Said it to all his friends always, no, my son, he cannot even do it. How do you think the son feels? So often actually it's not that he couldn't. I mean, he became even a highly professional swimmer later on, and he's a Y1 today for many years. But you see, it's often this kind of issues that there's this disconnect, and the father doesn't understand his son, doesn't connect to his son, doesn't step down to the place of his son and understand it, doesn't connect. This is where the problem comes. Now you need to realize, some people say, time will heal all wounds. When you have these kind of wounds, if you have a physical wound and you don't clean it, you don't treat it, and you only put a bandage on it, it only becomes bigger. Okay, till it kills you. The same with emotional wounds. So the next one. The feelings of masculine deficiency. I already said it's more than just a low self-esteem, it's a low gender esteem. Since the development goes so slowly the wrong direction. Of course, if there is an issue of sexual abuse, that is like a strong push. Teaching in school that I just shared about can be a strong push. But normally it goes very slowly. It's very unnoticeable. And so for any child where things go wrong, when they look at other guys, it looks like they are naturally masculine. And it feels, and it's like, I don't feel like that. Why does he have that and I don't have? Why does he have that confidence I don't have? Why can't he run faster? For example, for myself, I wasn't that athletic. So in school, what they used to do, my schools, is always when you have your sports class, you're going to play a game with two teams. So they take two people, and now they are allowed to pick one person. Whom do you guess was the last one to be picked?
Sure.
Well, I was most times the last or the second to the last. You understand? That's not fun. So you start asking yourself, what is wrong? Why don't they choose me? So it's all these little things that add up. Okay, and you start gradually feeling deficient in your masculinity. Something is wrong with my masculinity. I'm not good enough. Because you compare yourself with others. And then you gradually feel different and you feel lonely. Now, when you get to that stage, now you start, two things start happening. Okay, the first thing is you start idolizing other guys. The other one that will come after is also that there will be fear of men. It goes two ways. But the first thing is you start idolizing men, in particular certain things that you feel you lack yourself. So you might not idolize the whole guy, but you idolize certain aspects that you desire for yourself because you want to be accepted and affirmed. Okay, so in particular certain qualities of other guys get idolized, and that means that you get a bigger gap, because once you start idolizing something, it goes together with the belief I cannot obtain that. It's difficult or even impossible for me to reach that, because when you idolize, you make something bigger and more beautiful than it really is. So you create this gap, this split, this gulf in between you and masculinity, and that gradually grows wider and wider. Okay, so by idolizing another one, you minimize and suppress and bully actually your own masculinity by yourself. In the same time, it dehumanizes other guys, another man, because they become like gods, or certain aspects of become like gods. Now the issue is, when we look at how God created us, is there anyone the same like you? What did Paul say in 2 Corinthians 10:12? For we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves to those who commend themselves. But they, measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. So in other words, don't compare yourself with anyone else. You see, in this early childhood stage, from 6 till puberty, 6 till 13, 14, the whole aim is, just by reflecting to many other guys, to get to understand whom you are. Identifying certain bits and pieces and understand your own uniqueness. But God has created every one of us uniquely. Even in our body, look at the fingerprint. We have 10 different ones. And no one in history, no one today, no one in the future will have the same. The iris of your eye, unique, but the same inwardly. You are unique. There is no one like you. You are a unique expression of the image of the Lord in whom you are created. The way the Lord expresses himself, his image through you, never has there been anyone who does that the same way you did and you do. And no one in the future till the return of Jesus will express his character the same way you will when you walk with him. You're unique. And so this is where often the struggle starts. You are comparing yourself to others and reducing yourself and idolizing others. Just why? Because the Father is not there to protect you. The Father is not there to guide you and lead you because he's not connected to you. Now, of course, you have to realize for people with different characters, this derailing goes in different directions. Same-sex attraction is just one of them. It can go in many different wrong directions. Okay, so the root problem of homosexuality is very much the same as the root issue of many other issues. It's not that different. So the next one is the fear of man. Because what you idolize, you also fear. Because they seem to be much more powerful. They seem to be much more bullying, much more oppressive. And most of the people struggling with same-sex attraction are very sensitive and very gentle in that character. I will come to that also after in a group of 4 things you will see. So it's very easy for them to feel rejected by people who are just more bullied, more rough in their behavior. Okay. And so the message often given is you are not man enough. But where was that scripture that said that when you are sensitive, that's not a masculine trait? The scripture doesn't exist. It's a cultural belief. I mean, I don't. Do you also have Fulani in Ghana? You know that Fulani has beauty contest? Yes, Fulani love beauty contest.
What's Fulani?
Fulani is a tribe in West Africa.
Oh.
There are many of them in Nigeria. They love beauty contest. Just Google male beauty contest Fulanis. Because, sorry, woman, beauty contest among the Fulani is not for you. That's for man only. With fluffy, colorful clothes, with necklaces, earrings, everything. If you dare to go to them and say, "Oh, are you transsexual?" Well, that's probably the last word you have ever spoken.
Yes.
There was from that fluffy, beautiful clothes, they will bring a sword. How you dare offend them? They're very sure in their masculinity.
Yeah.
This is their expression of masculinity. And if you put them on a plane and you bring them here, the LGBTQ community starts to rejoice. Yeah, we're African transsexuals. Oh, no. Do you see many people who struggle with transsexualism because they're pushed into a certain direction because they like something? CIS always like dresses. Yeah, but it doesn't make somebody transsexual. I mean, go to Africa. You know in Nigeria, the kaftan?
Yes.
When I was married, man, I had this, we have the normal one and then you have the big, they call it in Nigeria jokingly the 1,500.
Yeah.
And now they call it maybe the 1,500,000 because the naira has dropped down. But it was like that cost you a lot of money because it's a big piece of cloth that you actually put up of your arms to
Yeah.
In Europe they call it a dress, but don't call it a dress in Africa because it's for man only.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's all kind of embroidery stitching on it. Beautiful. But the embroidery stitching for the man follows different kinds of patterns than for women. Okay. So anyways, Nigerian, I think also Ghanaian clothing is very colorful also for men with embroideries.
Yeah.
So it is masculine to express creativity as a man in Africa. But how much creativity are we allowed as men to express in Europe? There's not much space for it. So men get struggling when they love it. And they start thinking, and they are told by the culture, oh, but then you are a girl. Oh, you're just born in the wrong body. And these things are developing, these thoughts are developing from early childhood. When in another culture, there is just a place to express it, and it is taught, oh, this is very masculine. You understand? So when you are told that you are not a man as a boy, you are not a boy, even things like boys don't cry, you're not allowed to cry. Or why did God give me tears? Is that a mistake? And he should have given only girls tears and boys not. Why did Jesus cry? Wasn't he a real man? But these messages that are given, deceptive messages, create that they become afraid of certain things. So it creates a bigger distance. And so you start closing yourself up. You don't communicate anymore with other guys. Now in my DTS, I had to learn, and the Lord started training me and teaching me to talk with other guys, to overcome that fear of man. And so we had this week. I grew up in a very orthodox, very rigid religious church. So they never speak about the Holy Spirit. He's like the big absent one. And so I really wanted to know everything about the Holy Spirit. So we got Barry Kissel from England to come to teach about the Holy Spirit. And I was so looking forward to that week. And then he came and he said, the Holy Spirit is going to speak to every one of you this week. So when he tells you something, just come in front of the class and share. I was so eager, I really wanted to hear from the Lord. And the Lord spoke. The Lord told me, Ansel, tell that student, that guy, your testimony. And I said, what? God, you say to this cannot God. If the Lord would have told me, Ansel, go on an expedition, go prepare and climb Mount Everest, I would say, okay, Lord, it's tough, but I will do it. Okay, I love mountain hiking. Okay, it would have been easy to do. Because he would surely have provided, and it's amazing to do that one day. But okay, he asked me to share with the other guy. And that guy, if there was another student in the class, there was some other guys in the class that were in my, I had my own safe zone guys and my danger zone guys.
Oh, sorry.
If it had been one of the guys that I could kind of trust, that were more sensitive, then yeah, okay, Lord. But him, he even came with his girlfriend, with his fiancée to the DTS. Come on, it's not safe. And so I decided this was not the Lord speaking. And then the next day, I was trying to enjoy the teaching. And the Lord started reminding me, have you already told him? Why didn't you tell him yet? And I became Moses at the burning bush. I started bringing out every excuse. Yeah, but Lord, what if I start telling him and he's just busy and says, sorry, I don't have time. Then I'm a fool. No, I brought all these flimsy excuses. And then I came to the conclusion, okay, by Friday, Barry Kissel is going to leave. And then this is all off. Well, yeah, Barry Kissel left, but the Holy Spirit didn't. So the next week, he started telling me again, also, why have you not yet listened? Why have you not yet told him? So about the second or third week, I said, okay, Lord, okay, I give up. I will go and tell him. So I developed this smart way to make sure he would listen to me and that he wouldn't run away when I start telling. So I told this guy, I said, the Lord has put on my heart that I really have to share something with you. So can we maybe tomorrow, one day more than wait. Can we go tomorrow maybe for a cup of coffee? I think I will go to a restaurant with him and buy him a nice cup of cappuccino with a big piece of Dutch apple pie with it. So if he wants to run away, he will still remain seated because the apple pie is not finished. Can you just imagine my low self-esteem and my fear? So then when I was sitting with him the next day and we had our coffee and our wonderful apple pie with whipped cream, I realized it wasn't healthy, but I didn't know by then. He looked at me and he said, Ansel, wasn't there something you wanted to tell me? So, okay, no escape anymore. I put myself to the place of no escape, but and I did it intentionally, but that, because I knew otherwise I would never do it. So I started telling him, and I told him my story, my past and my struggles. And he looked at me and he said, Ansel, I'm so humbled that you dare to share this with me of all guys. He said, you see, my girlfriend, she's not a believer. At least now she is. She gave her life to the Lord, but she's not from a believer background. So she more recently gave her life to the Lord. And we already started having sex before. And to her, there is nothing wrong in us having sex. And he said, even in DTS now, we're still having sex. And I'm so afraid. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to tell her that I don't want it anymore because I'm afraid for my relationship. And I don't know how to tell my leaders because I'm afraid to be kicked out of the school. He said, but because you told me your struggle and your story, I can trust you now to tell my struggle. And that helped him to come out of the darkness into the most marvelous light and get the help also in the school to stop and change things. Don't worry, they're married and they're still well married today. But I felt so ashamed because the Holy Spirit had told me 3 weeks earlier to tell him. And I caused him to remain in agony for 3 extra weeks because I was too proudful, because you see what you call fear of man is also just your own pride. I was too proudful to humble myself to tell him. So I kept myself in darkness, kept him down. The Lord knows what he does. And then the Lord sent me on outreach. We had to pray. There were 2 locations we could choose from. Either Nigeria or to Thailand. My father had been in Thailand. So Thailand, I know I'm a landscape architect. I love flowers and plants and Thailand is so tropical, full of flowers and beauty and things. So we had to pray and I said, Lord, where do you want me to go? Please, Lord, I will go wherever you send me. Please send me to Thailand. As an architect, I can imagine things in my head very well. So let me tell you all the pictures my father had given. Internet wasn't that much yet. It was just starting in 2000. So all the pictures my father had brought from Thailand, I saw it in my head and I already was walking in those pictures. The next day, I tried to walk in those pictures again. It didn't work. It's very frustrating. I couldn't see myself walk there again. And then we had to pray again. And okay, the Lord showed me architectural style of mud block houses. I don't have those in Thailand. It's bamboo houses. Lord, bamboo houses. And the Lord told me very clearly, go to Africa. Thank God. My wife now is from there. But there were many reasons why that was very good. Much healing I received in Africa because of the African culture, and I would not have received that in Thailand. But the other thing the Lord did, he split up the school. All the special friendships, like the closer friends. I had those safe zone guys in my school that had close. The Lord told all of them to go to Thailand. And he did that with everyone. I don't know how he cut that scissor through that school. Every closer friendship was split in a different outreach. And there was only one guy in my Nigeria team. My two leaders were women, they were all women, we were 10 people, and there was only 2 guys, me and one other guy. And he was about the one that was the one I would last connect with. The Lord told him to go to Nigeria. And I had to share the room with him. You see, because of my fear of man, I had developed this whole thing, against particular guys. He turned out to be a very nice guy. I felt so ashamed that I had misjudged him so badly. Once in a while, like once every other year, we still write sometimes. Like I see him on Facebook, let me write him a message, and he writes me always back. Like he's a pastor now, he's doing great, and it's always good to just connect quickly with him. It's nice. He's a great guy. I know so much integrity. I had labeled him wrongly because of my brokenness. And the Lord in DTS said, well, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to force you to learn to connect with other guys in a healthy way. So that's about the fear of man. Then the next one is the estrangement of man, like the disconnect of man, and dissociation of maleness. I've already said a lot about it. Okay. So I think most of it. Oh yeah, there is also a spiritual factor. Okay, that plays in that. Because to disconnect from masculinity is also once you start getting into immorality, you start acting out on your homosexual sexual feelings. That there is a spirit that comes and takes control over you. I think you have learned already about the soul ties.
I don't think we learned it here.
Okay. Okay, when you have sex with someone, the Bible calls it the two become one. It's very simple. Every power Satan has over the one, since you become one, he now has over you as well. Going to a prostitute, well, Satan has about every power over prostitute, because all the power he had over all the man that came to her, he has now over you. That's why you have to break the soul ties. It's one of the things, I shared already with you, that I started praying when I was in the church in Toronto. Nobody had told me, but the Lord started reminding all my sexual interactions, and I started confessing them by myself as quick as I could. Was to break the soul ties. You have to break the soul ties, because the spiritual powers that come in at that moment and possess you, those spiritual powers will even drag you further away from your masculinity, even to the point that they call it this imprinting. There are many gays who have rejected their masculinity. Don't even try to attempt to fix it again. I was on the side of I tried to fix my masculinity, but the ones that have rejected their masculinity and identify with more with women, even though they might not be transsexual, they're more the feminine gays. They even will start talking with a different voice. Their voice will change, become very feminine and higher. Now, maybe a part of that is them just trying, but a part of it also is just pure demonic, changing their voice, pulling you more away from your masculinity and really making you believe this is who I am. Okay, and then start referring to one another as to other guys as, oh, my dear, and it's my girlfriend, and all those kind of things. So, but what it does, it ends you up in the Neverland, in a place of nowhere and of nothingness. Because if you see, especially if you see transsexuals, I know in Europe there are transsexuals who really try to be really perfectly look like a woman. But most times that's not the case. And most times you get more the drag queen kind of thing, or somewhere in between. But I know many gays or transsexuals who have a handbag, and wherever they go, even if they sit on the couch, they have the handbag next to them, they go get the coffee in the kitchen, they go with their handbag to the kitchen. Well, there are many women here. How many of you do that? Not one single woman does that. They're always with the handbag because they have to tell all the time, I'm a woman, I'm a woman, I'm a woman. Why do you need to tell all the time you're a woman? It's because you know you are not a woman. You know it, but you try to enforce it on yourself. It means you are in a place of nowhere, but disconnected from your real self. So now, as I said already, there are two. I see it as a scale, of how deep the brokenness is, and there are some sidetracks where you can get into. But basically, when you look from somebody who's solid heterosexual, you get somebody who's like has some confusion bisexual. Then you get the masculine gay, you get the feminine gay, and then ultimately transsexual, completely rejecting everything. And then there are all kinds of sidetracks in that. But that's basically the big line you can see. Yeah. And so when that brokenness goes deeper and the deception goes deeper, there is a very strong identification with the feminine. Now, already I shared that, at a certain age, boys are supposed to play with boys. In that age, I had a girlfriend. She turned out that she got married to a much older guy because she was looking for a father figure. That didn't work out. And then she became lesbian. Later on. But our whole primary school time, we were friends. We were close friends. So later on, when other guys started having girlfriends and asked me also, do you have a girlfriend? I said, man, I've had a girlfriend longer than you have had. Just to justify that, no, I don't have a girlfriend. Okay. The next one is oversensitivity. Now, sensitivity is good, but when a sensitive person gets broken and hurting, that sensitivity, it's like a wound you have that is infected. Now, a wound already is sensitive. Okay, but if you want to treat a wound, do it as quick as you get the wound. Okay, actually, your body is a little bit still in shock by then, so you can treat the wound without actually feeling it if you're quick. But if you wait, it becomes more sensitive, and then when it gets infected because you didn't treat it, it becomes a very touchy place. Like, man, oh, somebody look at it already starts hurting. The thought of somebody's hand going there, you know. And so this is what you get also, and this is why it's so tough to start often speaking to somebody in the gay lifestyle, because man, you want to start touching my wound, man, don't even mention there's a wound there. This is why you see the whole don't dare to say anything. Don't you know? You are a Christian. What is your ideology on the LGBTQ? Are you against us?
Yeah.
You know why? Because they see you as a threat, because you might want to touch and clean their wounds. You might even want to point out their wounds. Okay, so it's very, very highly sensitive. Now, does sensitivity make a man homosexual? No, it actually makes him, I think, a very wonderful husband to his wife, not to another guy. Okay. So when God, who designed you, said it is very good, then it is very good. Okay. The problem is when a son is more sensitive, the father has a little bit more difficulty often to connect to that son. I mean, I know sensitive men who never struggled with their gender identity, was solid heterosexual. But when your father does not connect, and the mother thinks, oh no, but he's too sensitive, he's more in danger, let me protect my son more, smothering him, killing him. Okay, that's what happens a lot. And then there is a lot of perceptions that become reality. Okay, so father hunger, we mentioned that earlier as well. You know, it's one of the issues behind. So I think we already had that one. With the father hunger, it doesn't actually matter if there was a real abandonment or a perceived abandonment. You see, the problem is if you don't forgive someone, in particular your parents, they're most close, and they did do things wrong, please raise your hand. Your parents never made a mistake in their life. Every parent makes mistakes. I wish I wouldn't make them. Man, unfortunately, I do sometimes wrong. I try not to. But if you as a child are angry and focusing and unforgiving about your parents' mistakes, that their mistakes is in the end all you see. You cannot see anything good anymore. Okay? So most men who struggle with homosexuality, about 99% for sure, feel that they were not affirmed and loved enough by their father when they grew up. Now, when it comes to girls, to lesbianism, for lesbianism, the percentage is lower in most cultures, except when a culture has really a big problem, which is actually like in India, in Philippines as well. Is when often mothers behave in such an aggressive way, strong way, that it ticks off the girl, that she doesn't want to identify with that. You know, Filipino culture is a maternal culture, not a paternal. You know the difference? Paternal is when the man is basically the one who takes the lead. Philippines is not the man, it's the woman. It's a woman pressurizing the children to perform well in school, in particular their daughters. I mean, even right now in my son's class, there is a girl who's, no, it was in the former school, but she's still connecting with them. It was in the former school, there was one girl. I mean, that girl has no life. She has to study. If she does not graduate with highest honors, oh my goodness, the world is too small.
Wow.
One time, there was a chat group, and of course, Brother Manuel is still in with the children of school, and the mom took this girl's, it was just a few months ago, the mom took this girl's device and wrote in the chat group, "You are all the ones to blame that my daughter is failing in school. Don't dare to contact her ever again. I'm cutting her out of this group right now." Can you imagine the hurt that girls go through? So it is easy possible that girl, and you know, when those kind of things happen, that doesn't want to have to do anything with femininity, because that's terrible. You don't want that. But that's not femininity. Okay, that's bullying. So it's very important. You know, my son, he's amazing. I have an amazing son, but he's sensitive. He's very caring. When he sees people who are broken, people who are hurting emotionally, he feels really great. And people find him, I mean, even online. Also girls and both girls and guys, but in particular girls are writing him when they're really struggling with things in their life, and they're sometimes even suicidal. They write him like, "Please, you know, I feel safe with you to talk." Because he wants to be a safe person, and he is a safe person. Not just by acting, but he really wants to be a safe person. And people feel it and notice it. So then he comes to me and says, "Papa, what do I do?" Because I don't know, because he's not a counselor. So yeah, the hunger for a father is often a very big issue. Okay, see, for example, with my father grew up when he was 5 when the Second World War started, 10 when the war ended. That's a very crucial time. They lived in Scheveningen, the word most foreigners cannot say. Then that was the area that was bombed a lot, so they had to move. They became Spargebiet, you know, they had to move out of their house because they became blocked off. They were not allowed to go there because of military movement, so they had to move. And the house, when they moved out, the next day a bomb fell close by and scattered all the windows of the house. So had they been there, they probably would have been wounded or killed. Then they stayed with other people. And after 2 months, you know, people can welcome you one day, but then after 2 months, they're looking like, when are you going? So they moved somewhere else, and then 2 days later, that house was bombed. Then my father one time went out to the bakery at the corner of the street, and the air alarm went off. And so my grandfather looked out of the door to see where his son is. and he sees he's halfway and see him look like, do I go to the bakery or home? And my father, probably seeing his father, run back home instead of going to the bakery. And a V2 bomb fell right on the bakery, nothing was left of it. Another time, the air alarm went off, but my grandfather already heard the airplanes coming. He was like, this is too late, I cannot make it to the safety shelters. And so people were running in the street, shouting, run, run, run. Particularly one lady, my grandfather told me when he was still alive, but he hid his family under the staircase because his strongest point. And when the batch of bombs had gone over, which were phosphor bombs, people were burning alive on the street. They ran out to the safety shelters and they had to step over the body of the woman who just 1 minute before had shouted to them, run, 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 and she was burning alive. It is a horrible text. And my grandfather was very rigid. He was so rigid. He didn't show any affection or love. He had this belief that, he twisted a scripture in the Bible around where it says there will be at least a minimum of 1 in a town and 2 in a city that always will be saved. So in other words, the Lord said, there will never be a place where I'm not present. But my grandfather had turned it around. There's a maximum of 1 in the town and 2 in the city. And since he was sure that he was saved in the town, so everybody else was burning wood for hell. So his own wife and children, you're all burning wood for hell because I'm going to heaven and everyone else, all the poor neighbors, they're all going to hell.
Wow. No kidding.
Yes. So this is how my father grew up. I mean, my grandfather, when my father just after the war, things were very costly. And somebody gave my father a sugar sheep for his birthday, made of sugar stuff. And then my grandfather said, oh, but you cannot eat it like that. It's dirty. You have to wash it first before you can eat it. And my father, being a little boy, he went to wash his sugar sheep.
Oh, it's gone.
Don't worry, it was unhealthy, I know. But the sheep just melted and my father was crying. And my grandfather was just laughing.
It's not
Terrible. So my father never did those kind of things to us, but my father never learned how to express love to us. And me being more sensitive, I needed that. But I never, at least not beyond, my father was 70. He started studying theology when he was 70. He graduated was 74. He was a pastor till he was 84, from 70 to 84. That is when my father learned. Okay, that's when my father for the first time said, Ansel, I love you. He never told me that in my childhood because he didn't know. I never sat on his lap as a little child. He never gave me a hug as a little child because he never had learned how to do that. Oh, when it came to us wanting to study, any study you want, I will make sure you do, because education had a high priority for him. So he would give us any education we wanted. When I had to bring my stuff from the one place to the other, he would always be ready there to help. He had his own ways that he knew how to express his love for us. And I had to hear from other people that my father had been talking to them about us, and he said, oh, your father is so proud of you. My father never told me himself. So you see, this really created a huge fatherhood. So, but those are those things that are so important for a child. So that is where you get to understand your identity. That's when you get to understand who you are. And of course, I already said if the one misses, the other one often, then the mother tries to compensate to take that place, but she is not the father. So it becomes overbearing. And so the next thing that happened is touch deprivation, the lack of a hug. Now, of course, as I already said, our Northern European cultures in particular are very cold, very distant. So guys don't hold hands, they don't hug. So they don't touch. But if your father doesn't do it either in a healthy way, then you get what is called a touch deprivation. Dr. Mark Laser, he said to be emotionally healthy, or Dr. Archibald Hart, Dr. Archibald Hart was. He said to be emotionally healthy, you need to have at least 6 meaningful touches every day to be stable, not to even grow, just to be stable. That means somebody needs to either touch you in a meaningful way, non-sexual, or say a real meaningful thing that touches you. Just to be emotionally stable, you need to have at least 6 a day. So start practicing, please, with one another. Start giving. When you want to receive, give first. Okay. It's so amazing when I see my mom now. In the special care center because she has dementia. They're sitting with 6 ladies on the table. Most of the day they're just looking at one another because they talk very little. One of them is more talkative, but the others can't talk, so she cannot talk. And then she's very happy when I come. She smiled, and when I come enter the room, she yes, I can talk. But there was a woman that I learned before from my sister was people that told her she was very depressed because she didn't feel she could connect with anyone. She doesn't talk much. When the brain doesn't want to work anymore. And my mom came the first time and she came to sit next to her, and she sits now always next to that woman. And she grabbed her hand and held her and smiled with her. And that woman, and also when I was there, my mom did that, and that woman grabbed my mom's hand and she smelled like, wow, just to get that touch. Her day was good. It's so important. So in order for myself to compensate my touch deprivation, this is something I think many people do, no matter what kind of issue you struggle with. In childhood, you create a fantasy world. You had fantasy friends in a fantasy world in your childhood. You think of people, you create some world where everything is fine and well, but you are the hero. And in my little childhood, I still remember, I even gave certain people certain names in my fantasy world, and they would touch me. And initially, in a non-sexual way, it was nothing sexual initially about. Just my desire to be touched by someone in a loving way. Of course, later on, that became gradually sexualized. When I got exposed to pornography, that got sexualized. But initially, that wasn't. It was just the real need I had. And of course, in your fantasy world, everything goes right. There's nothing ever wrong. Nobody ever rejects you. So that is the way how you try to cope with these kind of problems. And of course, later they get sexualized, and then that's how it's one of the first steps to enter into sexual addiction, is the fantasy. Okay, for me, it was so healing to go for my DTS outreach, not to Thailand, but to the Nigeria. Because you see, in Nigeria, it's very normal for guys to walk hand in hand and give one another a hug. I remember I was one evening, we had this young guy sitting at the gate, was our guard at the gate of the compound where we lived, and he was studying in a university, but he had a lot of struggles, abusive father. He was struggling with alcoholism himself. And later on, actually, he's still connected with me again sometimes. And so one evening, I'm like, we are all the time going out for evangelism, but our own gate guard, we're not even talking to him. So I walked up to him, I sat next to him one evening on the little wooden bench, and I just started a conversation with him. And he somehow felt quickly like, oh, he's somebody I can talk with, somebody I can share with. He grabbed my hand, he held my hand for at least half an hour. And the way he held my hand, and the Muslim mate told more even about what he was sharing with me than his words. And he started sharing all his frustrations and his difficulties and issues he was facing in his life. And his hand told the intensity of it. It was a very good communication tool. But you see, in Europe, that doesn't happen. We lack that kind of communication. And so it was very healing for me, that to have a touch that is from another guy that is not sexual. Because let me tell you, till that time, except I went also to a different church in the Netherlands, just before my DTS, I started going to a different church. And when I was in that church for the first time, I got a hug, because that's the church where men also hug. Not normally. But in that church, men also just gave a hug. And for the first time, I got a hug from a man that did not want sex with me. I got a real hug. Man, that felt so different and so much better, because that was the real need. So the touch deprivation leads very quickly into a very big sexual addiction once you start acting out. You see, I personally, I didn't want to act out for a long time, because I didn't want to break God's standards. So I felt like, but when I didn't have that easy opportunity. So, the temptation is not too much in your face. You can hold it out, even though in your mind you're sex addict, but not in action yet. Till my study location, the whole university moved from a smaller town to a big city. And of course, there were the gay bars, and I started going. And then I very rapidly, plummeted into a sexual addiction. Looking for something and thinking initially, wow, this is amazing, and oh, they want to touch me. Till I woke up very quickly with a big pain. They only want to touch my body, but they don't really touch me in love. They only touch me in lust. But then already it was too late. I was already hooked. And the emptiness inside only became bigger, because it's not that now not that my touch deprivation was gone. No, that only became worse, because I still did not get the real touch, but now I was even more far away from the real touch, because I was more ashamed, more living in secrecy, more condemning myself, and believing and feeling I was condemned by the Lord, because now I had given in. Now I couldn't get out anymore. And this is what typically is the issue of guys in the gay lifestyle, and that's why, again, they don't want you to talk about it. So the biggest homophobia is not among Christians. The biggest homophobia is among the homosexuals. You can call it internalized homophobia. Really hating what they do. Shouting on the outside, don't dare to talk into my mess. Well, they don't call it a mess, but it is. Don't come in here, because they hate what they do. They hate the rejection by which they feel rejected by other guys who only want their body and don't know how to love. You see, homosexuality doesn't create shame. It's shame that creates homosexuality. In the gay lifestyle, they often say, you are shaming us. It's not true. It's the shame that they had that created their homosexuality. Now you see, if you start acting out in the gay lifestyle, initially you think oh, you're on a pink cloud and everything looks so nice, till you realize the reality. And then the sentence comes, and this is not only for homosexuals. I think you hopefully already realize, hey, there are a lot of issues he's sharing that are connected to many other issues as well. I want you to know it's not that much different.
Yeah.
It's just some little things different. This sentence comes, if they really know me, if they would really know what's going on in my life. It's the lack of real intimacy. You can have physical intimacy, but that's not real intimacy. You know how you spell, the spelling of intimacy went a little bit wrong in English. You know the real spelling of intimacy? Exactly. Into me you see.
Oh.
That's intimacy.
Wow. Yeah.
I allow you to look inside me, and I'm not holding back. I'm not locking doors in my life. I can allow you to see what's going on. Okay?
Crazy.
So the next issue is isolation and loneliness. Loneliness has nothing to do with being alone. You can put me, Philippines has 7,000 islands approximately. Okay? Most of them are not inhabited. You can put me on a tiny island in the Philippines where no one else is, and leave me there for a week, and I will not feel lonely. I might get bored,
That's nice.
especially if you take my cell phone away and nothing else to do and no book to read, I might get bored, but I will not be lonely. Because loneliness means you are not known. You can put me on this little island all alone in the ocean. I'm still known. And I know I'm known, so I'm not lonely. You can be in the midst of a big party that you throw with 100 friends and be completely lonely. Because those 100 friends only know the image you have made of yourself to them, and they don't know the real you. And if you're honest with yourself, you say, if they only knew what is really going on in me, they wouldn't want to come. That means you are lonely in the midst of 100 friends. And don't blame your friends, because you are the one that doesn't even allow them. You don't even give them the opportunity to love you. You only have given them the opportunity to love the image you created for them to present yourself in a different way from who you really are. I always challenge people, I said, do what I did during my study time. Start telling everybody the truth. You will know your real friends, so you don't need to waste time on fake friends again. And if there are not many left, no problem. Start building new friendships based on truth. It's much more healthy. But the problem is, since we are living there, we start unhealthy relationships. Now, you already got teaching about codependency, so I don't need to go into that one. Please realize when it comes to unhealthy relationships, codependent relationships, that's the unhealthy, the codependent and sexual immoral relationships. Lust is selfish. Love is selfless. So lusting after one another is a selfish thing, is the opposite of love. Okay? Lusting after one another only makes your emptiness worse. Now we come to some biological factors and genetical backgrounds. Because how many of you have heard that there is a gay gene? They've told you, doesn't matter if you believed it or not, but you have heard people telling there is a gay gene.
Yeah.
It's scientifically proven there is no gay gene. Now they still try to claim that, there is still some factor in it. Well, let's look at some of the scientific studies and how to interpret them. Okay, now Bailey and Pillars did a research. I think, I don't know exactly year of it. It was in the 1990s. And what they did, they got together a whole group of identical twins, non-identical twins, and they compared them with siblings of different age. And that, of course, you can compare to general society. Oh yeah, they also took adoptive brothers. And when there's one person adopted, or both are adopted. So in their initial research, we still, if you ask AI, if you ask ChatGPT, and you ask about the percentage of twins both being gay, it will tell you, somewhere between 30 and 60%, and it will refer to this Bailey and Pillars study. Well, this Bailey and Pillars study is already outdated, already proven to be flawed. Even by Bailey and Pillars acknowledge themselves they made a mistake, and already other results are there of other scientific researchers. ChatGPT will still tell you this old data. And then when I asked ChatGPT, particularly about the new data, it gave me the percentages. And then I said, why did you not tell me? I said, why did you lie to me? By giving me outdated data, because then it also started telling me the other one was flawed. I said, why did you give me the flawed data and not the correct one? It gave me the flimsy, actually, ChatGPT can really lie, and it knows it lies, and it's like really getting human characters now. It told me that, but I gave you that study because it was such a landmark study, and it's more written about than this new one. Yeah, but this is the wrong data you gave me. I asked you for data. I didn't ask you to give me a political story. So please, when it comes to AI, you need to know what to ask and how to ask and set the parameters of what you want. Otherwise, it will just give you some political nonsense.
Yeah.
And then they said, the AI is telling us, what did you ask? AI lies.
In research. Double check.
So the initial result was 52% of the gays, identical twins, that when one is gay, the other one was also gay. I have heard many people who say, 50. The whole issue of homosexuality is 50% genetical.
Wow.
Is that the proper scientific interpretation? No, because if it is genetical, what do you expect? The genes are the same. So what do you expect? If it is genetical, then you have 100%. It would be exceptional. Now, if you acknowledge, there are different factors, but you cannot say, 52% is both, so then it's 52% genetical, and then 48% are other factors. That's a complete nonsense. But that's what they say. Later researchers in Austria showed actually it's only 12%. So the researcher who did the research in Austria went to Bailey and Pillars and said, hey guys, I redid your study. I'm supposed to get the same outcome, but I'm only getting 12%. Then Bailey and Pillars were honest enough, and they redid their research using a general census with a very massive amount in Australia. And they came to, let me check quickly. Yeah, they came to 11 and 14%, 11 for male and 14% of female. And then there is another research by Bierman and Buckner, and they did it in the US, and they only came to 7.7% for male and 5.3% for female. This is just very low. So in other words, if you already realize identical twins go through everything very much the same. Yes. They go do things together. So they go, when one is abused, most and both are abused. They perceive things very much the same way. The fact that the percentages are actually so low, it very clearly shows there is absolutely no genetic factor there at all. Has nothing to do with genes. Now, how can I say this so strong? The non-identical twins in the first research were 22%. Now, what Bailey and Pillet initially did wrong, they would go everywhere in the gay community. Right. Because how do you find gays? Go to the gay bar, go to gay organizations. And ask, hey, how many among you are twins? Can you please join our study? We're doing a genetical study. The ones that is gay and his twin brother is not gay, it's like, I better don't join because it's not favorable. So the ones that were both gay, they're much more joined, and the ones that only one was gay, they very much did not join. That's how they got the floor, but they didn't realize it at the time. But the general census, of course, you don't have that problem. So they don't realize it and then fill it out. Because they both fill out their own form. So the one says, yes, I'm gay, and the other one will say, I'm not gay, and you can see, hey, it's very much more clear. So the non-identical twins was initially 22%, and I don't have the number of that one in the later one. I failed to write that down when I found it, so, but it's also lower in the later research. Okay. Now, a non-identical twin is genetically just as different as a brother or sibling from a different age. But the non-twins were 9.2%. So why is the non-identical twin higher than the other siblings? It shouldn't be. So that shows not genetical, it has to do with, no, even non-identical twins are more closely experiencing things in the same way, not as strong as identical, but still stronger than siblings of a different age. And then the adoptive brothers were 11%. Why is the adoptive brother? It's genetically as different as anyone else in society, isn't it? Most times, even adopted come from another culture, so genetically very different. So with that, if genes would play a role, or genes would be the reason, you would expect the same 3% that general society has, isn't it? Why then is it 11%? It's wounded. It has to do with woundedness. It has to do with upbringing. It has to do with trauma. So this research so clearly shows it has everything to do with trauma, everything to do with upbringing, not with your genes. You're not born that way. Actually, we had one gay man, I think it was in the Netherlands, yes, who wrote an article, I think about 5-6 years ago, like, we have to get away with born this way. We really have to get rid of that. Come on, we know this was our lie we made up in the 80s to get accepted, but now we're accepted, so please let's get away with this lie. Oh man, was that man blasted down quick by the LGBTQ community that shut your mouth because he was very influential. He said, come on, let's go on. We know all we made up that story. Okay, there will be more statistics later on, but this one is in this area, very important. It's not genetical, but is there maybe a biological aspect? There's something in character just before lunch. Yes, but it doesn't make you gay. But there are 4 characteristics. And I think every one of you, how many of you know some gays? Some people struggle with homosexuality. Especially when it's guys. I still want to know from the girls, like, please, what is exactly their characteristics? The sure are there. But the problem in this whole area is there is very little research done about women. It's all about the guys. Almost nothing about the women. I really want to see more research about women. But for guys, it is sensitivity. We already mentioned that one. Melancholic, creative, and intuitive. These 4. So sensitive, melancholic, creative, intuitive. Most times, at least 3 of them, or even all 4 of them, you will find. Melancholic maybe is there, maybe it's not there, but often it's there. None of those makes anyone gay. The problem is, if there is the disconnect with the father, if there is sexual abuse, if there is bullying by other peers in school, when those kind of factors enter into this person's life, the road derails very easily, especially in a highly sexualized society. And even the highly sexualized can already be enough, derails into same-sex attraction. For another person, it just derails somewhere else. Maybe into narcissistic behavior, into whatever other problem, maybe in depression, whatever issue. It derails someone. But this group of men derail easily into same-sex attraction and gender confusion. Okay? Now, another aspect of it passing on through the generations is what you can say is like spiritual genetically or spiritual inheritance. You see, parents are to be a spiritual umbrella over their children. Now, if the father holds the umbrella over the family, which he's called to do, he's also held accountable for it. But he has holes in the umbrella for his own life. The children also get wet. The enemy cannot attack when the parents hold a solid umbrella over their family. But when there are gaps in there, children start struggling and they don't know why. Except the parents openly. But it doesn't matter if the children find out what the parents do or not do. They know the consequence because they start struggling in their own life in that area because they're not protected. So this is the spiritual aspect of it, where things can be passed down to little children without them realizing. Okay, so let's stop there for today, and then tomorrow we will continue with the last few. Oh, this is actually two to go for this list. Then we go look more on some other things also. Continuation here. Okay. Yeah. Let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, we really want to thank you for your amazing goodness. Lord, for your grace, for your mercy. Lord, that when we look at all this mess, all these things, Lord, that can go wrong in our lives, Lord, and our developments derail, Lord, you are the designer. You are the architect. Lord, you are the one who knitted us together in the womb of our mothers. And Lord, you are the one that can restore us no matter how broken we are. But I pray that you help us to understand not only the brokenness, but your ways and principles of healing. Lord, so that we may walk with you, both to find healing in our own lives and to pass that healing on to others. Lord, being loving children of you, representing you, Lord, as a holy priesthood, Lord, standing in the place representing you, reaching out to those who are broken, and be your hands, be your mouth, be your feet to bring your healing to those who so desperately need it. Lord, to understand, so that when they share, they know they are safe to share because they are understood. Thank you, Lord. Help us, Lord, in this journey. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.